Hi guys, welcome back to F1 News. Helmut Marko is back at it again, revealing beyond any doubt that Carlos Sainz is in contract negotiations with Red Bull for a potential drive at the team next season. As soon as that, Helmut Marko also reveals though that Audi's offer to Sainz is far more lucrative and an offer that Red Bull simply cannot match as it stands. The feeling being though, if Sainz wants the Red Bull drive, it is pretty much there for the taking. Very much interested your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I would greatly appreciate it. Firstly, Teo Porcher, current Formula 2 champion, he will be driving the Arrow McLaren in IndyCar, filling in for David Malukas this weekend in Long Beach. So that's going to be cool to see, just because there were rumours that Mick Schumacher is also on the way to IndyCar, potentially with Prema next year and going forward if that comes to fruition. There is of course a race this weekend as well. There's been some debate on what they've done to the track, because it's been several years since we have been to China back in 2019. Has the track been resurfaced? Has it been repainted? That's been a matter for debate, and as Albert Fabrega says, various changes to the circuits. Some areas have been resurfaced to try and remove some potholes. Others, such as the straight of Turn 1 and also Turn 8, the resurfacing in some areas looks like just bitumen, in others looks like complete resurfacing, such as certain images. So, this really opens the door to some chaos this weekend, because the track, nobody really knows what's going on. The asphalt is different in certain areas. Some of it's been resurfaced, some of it's been repaved. There's different, asphalt and bitumen a different part of the track. So feels to me like it's going to be rather difficult for the teams to get on top of this stuff. And Max Verstappen straight up says he is expecting chaos in the first sprint of the weekend or the season this upcoming weekend. Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc are actually discussing this as well. We'll talk about Sainz, of course, in a few minutes. But Leclerc says, yeah, fair play to Carlos. He was better in the last couple of races. But Leclerc believes he now understands what to do to fix the warm-up, because Leclerc's race pace has been very good the last two rounds, arguably better than Sainz's. And obviously questions as to whether what he did in Suzuka with the one start, whether Sainz was capable of that. But surprisingly for Leclerc, he's been behind Sainz the last couple of rounds. He says though that he's getting the most out of the car. It's just he's not executing the car well enough on the preparation lap to get the tyres in the right window to give the maximum possible grip. He says he thinks he's understood what to do to fix the issues that he's having with warm-up, and also the track in general should be a good layout for the SF24, but of course any track layout is a good layout for the Red Bull, and that is still the car to beat this weekend. The Red Bull rear wing, by the way, has been spotted with Red Bull on it rather than like Bybit or whatever it usually is, which I think does look a lot better, to be fair. So it seems like they're cooking something for the weekend. Some comments as well from the two old men of the grid nowadays as it is, and Lewis Hamilton actually saying, I'm going to be racing well into my 40s. That is because he actually gave this comment as well. I'm nearing 40 years old, but I still feel young. I think that he, that being George, who was sitting next to him, has more problems physically than I do. George was like, do I? And Hamilton said, yeah, I know you're spending more time with your physio than I am. And look at Hamilton's face here, like he was just cracking up about this. So I don't know if George is going to try and get him back for these comments during the course of the weekends, but I thought it was not maybe spicy, but a little bit of something to note between the two Mercedes drivers that have an interesting relationship, to say the very least. And Hamilton also making it very clear that, yeah, he believes he's got plenty more left in the tank, and if anything, he is in better physical condition now than he has been, several years ago, and even in better physical condition than George. Maybe his spine back at Baku 2022 would disagree, because he seemed to suffer with the porpoising more than George did, but times change and the porpoising isn't really in effect anymore. Alonso has always been an absolute killer on and off the circuit, but he does say, and look, that Alonso isn't going to bite the hand that feeds him. He's not going to criticise Stroll. He called this guy a future world champion a couple of years ago. So we know how Alonso operates the politics of these teams behind the scenes. But he does discuss Stroll's future, because this is relevant to the Carlos Sainz discussion, where he could go. The Aston Martin seat is actually a very attractive seat right now for a couple of reasons. They're making progress, but especially looking forward to 2026. The Honda partnership from an engine perspective, but also, as we discussed yesterday and the day before, the Aramco partnership from a fuel perspective, because Aramco is the oil, petroleum supplier that's been giving the samples to the FIA to help them test and figure out this 100% sustainable fuel that they're going to try and use for 2026 and beyond. So the feeling is that if there's any combination which is the most likely to be successful on the engine side in 2026, Aston Martin may be the answer to that question. Probably then you'd put Mercedes and Ferrari up there, and therefore Red Bull and Ford, that partnership, falls somewhat further behind, as does Audi, because, who knows how Audi are going to come out the gates. But on paper, I don't think anyone's really expecting them to be winning championships year one, which is why Carlos Sainz's decision now is rather important. But Alonso discusses the Lance Stroll predicament because, I think most people, most fans would say, do you want Stroll in the car? Do you want Sainz in the car? People would prefer that to be the case because as Aston moves forwards, I think they probably need a better driver alongside Alonso at some point, depending on how long you compete for, of course. And I think most fans would like to see it. Lance Stroll, on his day, he can be respectable and maybe even good. But most of the time he's pretty underwhelming. One thing that he does have, and we said this the other day, that apparently Lance Stroll's feedback to the team is very good. And I was like, are we seriously using that as the reason why you're keeping him rather than the elephant in the room that he's the son of the owner Lawrence Stroll? But actually Alonso explains this in some detail, and it's a classic Alonso comment here because he's giving credit to Stroll, but at the same time, he's also basically gassing himself up. So he says, Lance is a lot more sensitive, which is very important for the team. I'm a little bit insensitive to things sometimes, and this is not a good thing. So basically what he's saying is that to reach 100% of the potential of the car, sometimes I'm not able to do that without the help of my teammates. Lance Stroll's feedback is crucial because sometimes Alonso just drives around the problems. So pretty much what he's saying is, I'm so good that it actually is a problem. Like, I'm suffering from success. And to be honest, I think that, sure, Alonso and Hamilton, these other greats, will give good feedback to the team. But sometimes when you're so naturally talented, you instinctively drive around some of the limitations the car has without even recognizing you're doing so, possibly, when you're just that good. And Alonso's basically saying, I'm that good. Whereas if you're Lance Stroll, who, has more, let's say, more sensitive, as Alonso said, to the problems in the car, he can then actually give that feedback to help the engineers improve the car so Alonso doesn't have to work around the issues. So there is some logic to what he is saying, but it's just quite entertaining the way that he went about saying it. Lance Stroll himself, though, has discussed this and says, look, time will tell if he stays. The reality is, if he wants to stay, he will stay. And the car is only getting better and better, probably. Sure, the start of last season was the opportunity to capitalise, to get a podium, and that wasn't possible. But the feeling is that they are moving in a good direction, and I don't think Lawrence Stroll would push his son out now, as it feels like they're on a good trajectory. Unless, of course, Lance himself wants to leave, which is definitely possible. And even Mike Crack says, Aston Martin is Lance's home. The whole project has always been around him. So I think that is relatively conclusive in terms of what we expect from Aston. So that is one less seat available. One driver that wants a seat pretty desperately right now, of course, is Liam Lawson. And Helmut Marko, we're going to discuss his full interview in a second. One of the things, though, he said in this interview was with regard to Liam Lawson. Now, he didn't mention Ricciardo specifically in this comment, although he did mention him elsewhere. It would naturally be fascinating for us if we could see Lawson in Formula 1 this year to get a clearer picture for 2025. But it is a complicated topic. And saying the following as well, with Liam Lawson, we've got a strong driver in the team who is contractually entitled to drive for another team if he doesn't get a cockpit with us. So that's also the feeling on Lawson, that basically they've told him, look, you will get a seat from us, as in Racing Bulls, AlphaTauri, Toro Rosso, RB, whatever, in 2025. And if we can't give you that, then you will be able to go elsewhere and be a completely free agent and probably get a seat somewhere else anyway, to be honest, after his performance last year when he stepped in for Daniel Ricciardo after he broke his wrist back in Zandvoort. So the implication being, we want to get him a drive. And if Ricciardo doesn't step it up, it's probably going to be for his seat. And this is a very crucial weekend for Daniel Ricciardo, because he has said so far this season, or certainly he has implied, that potentially some issues with his chassis and elsewhere in the car have been holding back his performance levels. He's got a new chassis this weekend, so Ricciardo absolutely has to deliver a solid to good performance and probably beat Yuki in one of quali or the race to try and get back on the right track. He says himself, I've not shown the best of me yet, but Liam Lawson is very much so waiting in the wings. As is Kimi Antonelli at Mercedes. He did his first W12 test yesterday at Austria. This is actually the livery they ran, which is pretty nice in the old, W12 from 2021 season, of course. He was in Austria, driving around and getting some practice and some test miles in. If he impresses Mercedes increasingly, as he does does the test runs in the W12 and certainly the W13, they will consider him more eligible, let's say, for that seat next season at Mercedes. And to be honest with you, if Carlos Sainz doesn't go to Mercedes, you've got to think Antonelli probably will happen at this point, because what other options are there? Toto Wolff doesn't want to miss out on what he sees as the next Verstappen. Now, I thought this was maybe a little bit premature, shall we say, to compare Mercedes past, present, being Schumacher, Hamilton, and then Antonelli. It's like, okay, I think we've got to give this kid a bit of time before we start putting together graphics like this, but maybe it tells the picture of like how highly rated Antonelli is within Mercedes and the F1 grid in general. So it seems quite likely that Toto wants to put him in that seat. The feeling was, though, that, well, if Sainz is available, maybe it makes sense to get Sainz for 1 or 2 years as a bit of a stopgap. Sainz probably thinks, well, if I outperform Russell, then I get to stay. Or Sainz thinks, well, if I bide my time a bit, then I can go to Audi, you know, maybe in 27 or even in 26 when they potentially have a competitive project, because I don't think Sainz really wants to go to Audi Sauber now and just struggle for a year. But Sauber obviously know that, and therefore they are apparently giving him a rather lucrative offer to try and get him to join it right about now. And yesterday we heard rumours that by the end of this week, Audi want an answer from Sainz. Are you joining, are you not? And therefore they can make their decisions. But this, as Carlos Sainz says, my best options are still open. So, you know, he doesn't think that losing the potential Aston Martin situation is a problem. He feels like, yeah, Merc, Audi, and potentially, and even quite probably, Red Bull is on the cards. So this is what Helmut Marko has to say, and it's funny, right, because when all this power struggle was happening, apparently Marko was getting told by Red Bull, hey, don't talk to the media. We've had enough of you yapping, your mouth to everyone that puts a microphone in front of yourself. And, well, he's back at it again, isn't he? So here he is talking to the Austrian press, I believe, on various topics. I think Eric Van Haren tweeted this out. It made me think, wow, it's interesting, because Eric Van Haren, of course, close to the Verstappen camp, isn't really going to get much juice from Helmut Marko on the more Austrian side of the power struggle, but he does talk to Austrian media. So firstly, he mentions on Checo Perez, on how he has started out the season. It is clear that Checo is currently having his best season since he has been with us. Obviously, last season Checo started well, but maybe not quite on the level of consistency that he is showing this year so far. If he maintains these performances like those in quali in Japan, then he is certainly the best option for 2025 at Red Bull. He is a worker for the team and has also now realised that the radically different path he took last year with regards to setup was the wrong one. Now the car is closer to Max's setup and that helps him, which is kind of interesting, right? That, because I was mentioning this yesterday, it feels like Checo has found something, whether that's like in himself mentally or whether that's with the car. Maybe this is it, that last year he was messing with setup ideas to try and find an edge over Max, like to try and find a way he could design the car or set up the car so that he could actually beat Max. Now he's admitted, all right, whatever, I'll use Max's setup and I'll settle for being second best, but I will be second best and not third, fourth, or out in Q2 or whatever. So this is the interesting thing for Perez and for Sainz, is Sainz a better driver than Perez? I do believe so. But does Sainz add an element of risk and danger and potential drama internally at Red Bull? Yes. And Perez is, easy for Max to handle, so it doesn't really create as much risk keeping him. The problem is if he's too far behind Max, then Red Bull obviously, might not win the Constructors in a straight fight with a Hamilton, Leclerc, Ferrari lineup next year, which on paper is very tasty indeed, as is the present Leclerc-Sainz arrangement, and they aren't far off Red Bull anyway, especially given Max's DNF back in Australia. They've had good starts to the season. The feeling is that maybe next year Ferrari will be closer to Red Bull than they are right now. So if Perez maintains this level, then I don't think Marko is wrong that he makes the most sense. He still wouldn't be as fast as Sainz, I wouldn't say, but he is, a low-risk option with reasonably decent rewards. Now, he also mentions on Yuki, and he discusses Daniel, but he does also admit outright that Carlos Sainz will be in the conversation, or let's just say straight up is in the conversation. Does the name Carlos Sainz also play a role in future planning? We are talking to him. So, this guy, he doesn't back down, does he? Like Helmut Marko, he will tell you anything if you ask him a direct question, because, it's being very clear, they are in discussions, they're in negotiations, whatever you want to say, with Carlos Sainz. They're at least having that conversation with him. So clearly there is interest on the Red Bull side, because Hamilton, let's not forget, reached out to Red Bull, we believe, at least it was rumoured at the time, and we thought, surely not. And then he joins Ferrari, and then it becomes clear that, yeah, you know what, Hamilton probably was talking to Red Bull about a potential offer. Apparently Alonso did the same, but I think it was Mark Hughes from the race that says, yeah, Alonso and Hamilton reached out, but there was no warmth from the other side. Red Bull weren't interested in getting Hamilton or Alonso alongside Max, and probably fair enough. But this indicates, yeah, there is interest from the Red Bull side in Sainz. And obviously there's always going to be interest from any driver in the fastest car and team. He's having the strongest season in Formula 1 so far, Sainz, but he has a very lucrative offer from Audi that we cannot match or beat. But we still know him from the Toro Rosso days, even back when he drove with Max. But it really hurt him back when we at Red Bull relied on Verstappen and not him, because, that relationship, especially given Carlos Sainz Sr. and Jos Verstappen, it did get kind of toxic, right? And this is why you might think Red Bull could avoid it. But then again, it depends who actually calls the shots. The belief is nowadays that probably Christian Horner wouldn't be opposed to doing this because, Verstappen is kind of more aligned with the Marko side of things and on the Austrian side of the business. And, Christian Horner now seizing power might have quite a mind to say, you know what, yeah, we're going to bring in Sainz. We're going to give Max a bit more of a challenge. You're not going to get it your own way, Mr. Verstappen, and same to Jos, of course, that I'm sure Christian Horner wants some revenge on. So, yeah, that's what he says. They're talking to Sainz, but he has a massive Audi offer that Red Bull cannot beat or even match. But, of course, Audi, they might not be good in 2026, and they certainly won't be good next year. So that's a debate that Sainz needs to have. What matters more to him? Getting the Audi deal signed, which is on the table, ready to go if he wants it, but we heard yesterday that he has to tell them very soon. They're pushing for an answer because they're offered a big contract. They're like, look, Carlos, are you going to sign this bloody thing or are you not? Because if you're not, we're going to get somebody else and we might not want you come 2026. So Sainz has to weigh this up. But to me, if you're a racing driver and Red Bull are interested in potentially getting you back, you've got to debate it as Sainz just because of, the Toro Rosso thing, the way that Max kind of owns that team. But I don't know if that's so clear anymore after the Christian Horner, the power struggle and everything. Feels to me that Horner will call more of the shots now than he did before, possibly. And I feel like the Verstappens will have less power in the arrangement. So I don't think it's the worst time for Sainz to join. And also, if you really, back yourself as a driver, and sure, Sainz has been out-qualified by Leclerc 60 to 65% of the time, and that would probably be the case with Max as well if you were to join Red Bull. But still, if you back yourself as a driver that can, do what Rosberg did at Mercedes and win a world championship somewhat against the odds, then you got to join the fastest team, right? You're getting kicked out of Ferrari. It's not clear over the next few years that there's ever going to be a better world championship team than Red Bull next year. Especially because if you join Red Bull, the key challenge might be with Ferrari, and there'd be a great opportunity there for Sainz to, get one over on Hamilton, as it were, for him getting replaced at Ferrari. There's a lot of reasons why, if I'm Sainz, it's difficult to turn down the Red Bull offer if it is there, and if they're in negotiations, then clearly Red Bull have a number that they're willing to pay to get Sainz. They know they have a very attractive seat, so they don't exactly need to go around offering the big bucks because, they can rely on the fact that Sainz would want to drive for Red Bull for probably far less money than Audi would offer him. So I'm sure there is a debate to be had, but the way that I think about the way Carlos Sainz thinks makes me feel like he's going to want to take this seat, because I don't think Sainz is a Lando Norris where he'll be like, you know what, I'm probably better off build my own team and beat Max that way. I think Sainz has the confidence that he can go in there and do a job in the same way that Hamilton, Alonso, even Russell, I think feels that way. Sainz probably feels the same to me. Does he actually have the talent to do that? I'm not convinced. But I think it would be a more entertaining driver pairing than the Verstappen-Perez situation that we currently have. So let's just see how this trends. But the feeling is, yeah, Perez is doing a good job. We heard yesterday that Perez has got a month and a half, end of May, Perez has, until they see what happens. But the fact that Red Bull have told, apparently, Sainz, look, we are interested in your services potentially, and maybe, they might not give him an offer outright if they want to potentially keep Perez, but Sainz might think, you know what, all right, Audi, I'll leave you to the sidelines. I'll hope this Red Bull thing actually works out and get the contract kind of further negotiated. And then, of course, he wouldn't have to go to Mercedes, which, do you really want to go to Mercedes? I mean, sure, it's probably the best seat available, that they're not exactly trending in a good direction, and there's even an argument for Sainz that, well, you know what, maybe it makes more sense to go to Audi and be the figurehead of the project than go to Mercedes and be, an afterthought, given the fact that Toto clearly wants to put Antonelli in the car. So it's a big debate to be had on this, but Sainz to Red Bull seems now more likely than ever because Helmut Marko has straight up confirmed they're having discussions. So intrigued to your thoughts in the comments below. Just a couple of things to mention here. We have a trophy, of course, for this weekend's Grand Prix, and it will be a wearable trophy that you put around your neck like a wreath and then it lights up. So it's actually a really cool design. It's a pretty cool idea, this, I'm not going to lie. We saw like the lighting up trophies last year, and the winner this weekend will put it around the neck and it'll, do some sort of a light show or something. So pretty cool, I suppose. Very much intrigued to your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.